I am Dan from Wrench AI, and when we went through the goals and the sustainable business development goals, we noticed number 17. It popped out to us by far the most. Strengthening the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. Um, we found this is almost an injustice of its own sort because this functionality and the ability to make something really special come together with a coalition is incredibly important. We found that this was almost one of those things that enables all of the other goals to exist in the first place, quite frankly. So we actually think it deserved to be number one after all. Of course, if you know your Margaret Mead, right? Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful individuals can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that other has. And essentially, that is what Wrench is designed to do. We built an AI-driven SaaS that is designed to give people an industry agnostic means to ramp up and launch new innovation and be able to share their insights later. Much harder than it seems it would appear. This was basically the foundation of the concept, and I'm sure a bunch of you are familiar with it. I mean, we heard Ryobi, I've heard Kinkeepers talk about early adopters. Verdant, we're talking about it. Dorothy was just talking about innovators. So I'm assuming everyone on the call has probably heard of this innovation adoption curve, right? Or whether you've heard of it as crossing the chasm. Malcolm Gladwell said this is one of the most important concepts in business, but we all know that basically as new technologies are introduced to a market, you have these groups on the left side of your chart for innovators and experts that kind of need to sign off on that innovation before they hand it to influencers, before they hand it to early adopters, before they hand it to late adopters and onward. And basically each group gives a pass to the subsequent group for that innovation to take hold. We have basically used and started with the concept of semantic matching to basically see if we could go into an industry and combine the semantic matches that were associated with a product or new innovation, a role or a challenge, and their contact lists, intent, or publicly available data to basically figure out which one are these, right? So everybody is on one of these curves somewhere, but you may be an innovator in running shoes on the call. We might have people that are innovators in AI, but we might be, late adopters when it comes to golf shoes. And so being able to figure out what these curves look like and where each person in our contact list is, or which corporation or strategic partner, where they are in this curve allows us to basically figure out, okay, well, what order of operations do we approach them with, and how can we best kind of organize that coalition and borrow their expertise, if you will. So this is kind of an example of the rollout prescription and the roadmap that a corporate entity would use for new innovation and product rollouts, right? We go get those experts to basically validate the vision. We'll jump to late adopters to basically refine the message and basically simplify the complexities, get proof from early adopters, and then build out through early adopters and late adopters. So this is what we've built. We've laid patents and a patent foundation kind of going forward for this entire process. And this is kind of how it works from a client-facing perspective. So they upload their API or contact list or their corporate list. We've already connected with APIs that are GDPR compliant, publicly available professional forums and things like that. The AI will use NLP and machine learning on top of that to basically go through and look for triggers or cues that are associated with innovators in that space, right? Have they specifically built product? Have they brought something to life and really literally gotten their hands dirty, so to speak? We keep score and evolve. So as we tie in the client's conversions associated with whatever there is, whether it's subscriptions or sales or funding events or whatever, those algorithms basically feed that using automated ML back into those algorithms to basically improve them and evolve them even further. From there, the client can basically customize their prescriptions to add whatever else they'd like on top of what they can get out of the system. So we did a little kind of thought experiment where we went in and uploaded some of the people that are like some of the more famous people on Twitter and LinkedIn. We did Mark Cuban, and then we uploaded a handful of the UN like SDGs to the platform. This is basically what the platform actually literally looks like. Basically, if you look in the top left, we have our innovators and our late adopters. We were able to generate outreach prescriptions, messaging strategy prescriptions, and basically figure out, all right, who is our segment? Who do we talk to? And what do we say? This is live kind of now as we speak, but it allows you to basically scale those coalitions. What do we ask innovators for? What do we ask early adopters for? I know we're coming to the end of my 4 minutes and I don't want to go over. So I'll see if we can take questions from there.
You were over by a few seconds, which is okay, but it was a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. Any questions? Maybe I would ask, right? So I see those, I see Carlo. So Carlo, please, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question, Dan. So is the idea that through this technology, you can identify folks in the world that are likely to be sympathetic and or even active or proactive in the field of making the planet a better the world a better place? Is that kind of what?
Very much so. It was developed from strategy.
Add some color to that.
Well, it was developed from strategy that goes back like 15 years, and we were applying it originally in crowdfunding, right? We were a digital strategy firm working in the crowdfunding space specifically for equity. And we found out, regardless of the size of the company, the phenomenon of basically being able to figure out who those coalition partners would be was one of the like recurring landmine kind of fail opportunities that people always hit. There's a thing called the Dunbar principle, where basically you can only keep about 150 to 200 people straight in your head. That's about 1/8 of your actual opportunity and population that you have available to you. So we basically said, well, let's do something. Let's basically use and do the same thing that their brain is already doing from memory, but let's make sure that it's incorporating their entire network. So we combined it with, social network APIs and their contact lists. So yeah, what it would basically do is enable them to process each of those groups individually, do them, and basically be able to rely on the AI and the ability for it to kind of hold everything in memory. And our initial kind of results that were used in our initial case studies that were used with startups and investment firms that were trying to like screen deals and basically look for, hey, which investment partners should we send these to? Were on average like 65 times better than the human was. A trained human who literally did this all day, every day, was about 65 times better, both 30 something times faster. And I think I think it was like 35 times more thorough. Like, they would come back with maybe a couple dozen recommendations. The software could come back with 350. And they would validate that 350 as, yeah, I forgot that, or I didn't know that this individual, maybe they haven't worked in, like, say, video games recently, but I didn't know they founded a video game company 10 years ago. So it's actually worked to tremendous success in terms of case studies.
Thank you, Dan. So we can build better partnerships with Wrench AI. I appreciate that. I'll hand over to the other judges.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So maybe you go with Tanya and then Sarah right away.
Hi, Dan. Thank you very much for that. I think that the question was really helpful also for clarifying some of the things that I wanted to ask. But typically, what would be the job title of somebody using this, and how frequently would they use it?
Sure. The people that are developing products are definitely the ones that gravitate to it the most. So you usually have, in a startup context, you have founders or funding platforms or portals, whether they are funds, they're the people that are screening the deals, because they'll oftentimes be looking to build their coalitions. On the corporate side, it's the product manager, the people that are actually developing new product. The really nifty thing about all of it in terms of use is it's kind of it's an annual type of thing, usually, if you're one of those three groups. But because those insights and those, let's call them personas, those segments of like innovator, early adopter, are relatively consistent across each space, you can hand those insights to your subsequent partners. So the marketing team can use them to develop campaign messaging. We've actually had clients using this for sales teams as well. And usually when they get their hands on them, they begin recycling a lot of the insights, and it becomes a very frequent, like a monthly refresh type of tool. So it actually can be refreshed quite frequently as it evolves.
And what's the cost of the tool then?
We're working on getting it even cheaper, but right now we're basically like $25K to set up and basically build an integration, and then we're a cost per call model after that. Again, it goes much cheaper at scale, but the most expensive is usually 36 cents for a single person to get like basically 5 or 6 different insights. And then after that, if they want to build custom models, we implement those at like 12 cents per call. And there's a setup fee just depending on how complex the model is, but we're trying to make sure that it's approachable and doable for even startups. So,
thank you.
yes, sir.
So you're making inferences about people to then put them in categories of being like an early adopter of golf shoes, as you said, or on the, the later adopter. Have you thought much about any potential sort of ethical considerations of categorizing people? Is there an effect on me, for example, if I'm categorized as a late adopter, would I not be potentially offered or reached out for partnerships or things like that? Have you done much thinking about that kind of aspect of it?
A lot. I mean, this is one of those, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a tool, and you go, yeah, because you have to deal with, to some extent, the double-edged sword of personalization is that it's simultaneously the technology that allows us to get rid of spam and to get rid of billboards, but simultaneously misused is absolutely just the hotspot for privacy issues or other bias issues. Yeah. So absolutely. We've talked a lot about basically how do we actually use this? I mean, one of the good things about kind of the phenomenon that is identifying a late adopter or a laggard is not that they actually get a negative connotation. They get less of a connotation just because there's less data. If I'm not into oil and gas, it's not that you won't find me talking negatively about it. You just won't find data on it. So a lot of this is actually reinforcement learning that's combining a positive conversation about a specific technology as opposed to putting it into a bad bucket. And the late adopter stuff, in terms of what those kind of segments do, most of them, every one of them actually has very much a use case. It is absolutely very possible that they're not in the correct category. So for example, if someone was a late adopter in a specific technology, but instead of actually being a late adopter, they were technically just an innovator that didn't post anything online ever. We chose data sources that were already GDPR, CCPA compliant up front and had really mainstream type of data sources, the stuff that you can get just by typing in, Sarah Bird into Google. We wanted to use those because we basically said, let's make this thing basically speed up what a human could do anyways, with data that is very readily available and at someone's fingertips available anyways. So we don't have to worry as much about it. If someone, we kind of work with the idea of inevitably someone is going to hack every system that you ever create. And when they look, you should actually turn out to be the good guy. So if they basically find out it's stuff that they already volunteer anyways, and it's basically just split into a segment which don't really have a negative connotation, they just have different use. And we aren't pulling data sources that really don't look for things that I hate the phrase, but we say around the office, we wouldn't look in anyone's underwear drawer because that data is not necessary for this. So we'd absolutely think about it a lot. A lot of the next iterations that we've been building this year for our API are model deployments like on the AWS marketplace, where they can basically take our models into their environment, similar to kind of how like healthcare works, so that they can run the model in their environment. We don't have to touch any of the data ever, and it stays in their environment at all times. It processes their data. We only just basically hear back about the health of the model. I think there's a lot of implications for that going forward, and I want to be very careful with it. So yeah, it's definitely the thing that keeps you up at night if you don't do it well. So.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The one I heard privacy, some about the effect on people being classified. It would also be good to think about how users understand how the system is biased, right? It's biased towards people who are very vocal about a topic, which is okay. But
Sure.
As long as like users are empowered with that information so they can correct, that would be the other dimension that would be
Sure.
interesting
Sure.
to think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You will see that in the actual app. I know that there's like helper text and things like that say, hey, as a heads up, this may be a person that just didn't have data as opposed to identified negatively or something like that. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.